seen in Jacksonville, it's cool. I think that not the I don't go full throw out the record books with this, but it is rare that we get a true no-show from these two teams, these two programs when it goes into this rivalry. I'm always excited for this one, no matter where the teams are in their respective seasons. Obviously, Georgia #1 in the country, Florida unranked. I expect that this will be one of the stronger efforts from the Gators. Is that fair?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Better be. I mean, you're coming off a bye week. You should be max health. We're going to find out just how good Florida is, right? The South Carolina and Tennessee wins look a little bit worse after last weekend. Tennessee collapsed against Alabama, and South Carolina was handled easily by Missouri. So, sorry, the private chat's just going nuts here. Sometimes the jokes are too good. Florida has looked pretty competent to me, though, in recent weeks, especially on offense. They have Graham Mertz playing well. It's a low depth of target, so he's not chucking the ball downfield a whole lot, but that's not particularly surprising. They try to get the run game going more. I wonder how well they can run it on Georgia, because Georgia so far this year has been pretty damn good in coverage. We talked about it after the Auburn game. Auburn needed to find a way to hit one shot play on them, and they got zero. Kentucky, really until the thing was late, didn't hit a whole lot on them. Georgia's been great in coverage. Can Florida run it on Georgia enough to maybe open up some play action stuff? I guess we'll see. Otherwise, it could just be sort of boa constrictor.
What stands out, Danny? What stands out about this one? Where are you looking at the game?
So it's interesting because you mentioned, Florida. Did they try to run it on it? The Graham Mertz short, controlled passing game has really worked pretty well. I almost wonder if you come out with play action pass on first down, because I do think if you try to run it on them, as good as ETN has been, I think that could be a futile effort. Georgia, for as great as they've been over the past few years defensively, and you're still only giving up 14 points a game. Like, it's not like they're just trash all of a sudden. They're not going to mix them up for USC. They're not getting as much pressure, like they're only have 12 sacks on the year. Their pressure rate, 30.3% of the times, 87th in the country. So I would think you could maybe have some success. I mean, that the other teams, I know Auburn ran it with their quarterbacks, but Spencer Rattler threw it pretty well against Georgia's secondary. I don't know. We gave our picks yesterday, and my synopsis was, if you get the two best versions of these teams, I think Georgia runs away with it and covers, wins and covers. But what confidence level do I have in it? Really, we saw it against Kentucky, and Devin Leary is not the same quarterback that Graham Mertz is. Totally different offense. Speaking of, trying to run the ball, that didn't work out well. And then Carson Beck, quietly, it's very uncharacteristic what Georgia has been this year, because, averaging, 337 yards a game through the air. It's the most since 1994. Was that Eric Zaire who would have been there? It goes back that far. It's crazy. And they're throwing it a lot. And I know a lot of that was to Brock Bowers, but I think the best thing you've got going is Carson Beck playing with confidence. And I totally agree. It is what are we going to get without Brock Bowers? But he's a pretty seasoned quarterback. He's not a first year, they usually get 4 or 5 games. You're kind of into it. I think he'll be able to throw the ball well too. So I think it's gonna be a really interesting matchup. I don't know. That's like a cop out, but I will give picks tomorrow.
Are you you got a lock on this game? You already dialed in one?
Maybe.
All right.
I've got one. It's been weird this year because I've been trying to figure out, as I watch Georgia, am I mostly underwhelmed with their front seven because I'm comparing it to the teams we've seen the last few years, or is it just that this front seven really isn't that good? And I'm kind of coming to the conclusion that it's just not that good. It's not bad. Don't get me wrong. It's above average. But I feel like when I watch it, I don't think it's outstanding. And frankly, in this matchup, I'm not sure Georgia has the best front seven. like, I think there's a strong argument to make that Florida's defense up front has been better. I think the biggest difference is, Bud, you mentioned it. Georgia's secondary is really good. It is very difficult to move the ball through the air on this one, but like, other than Chambliss and Brinson, I'm not super enthusiastic about anybody I've seen. I think there's good news in that Jamon Dumas-Johnson, I thought, got off to a really slow start this year, but he's kind of picked it up in the last few weeks. And I think that's good for Georgia's defense because I think the more he can do, the better they are. But when I look at Florida, like I look at Princely, Uman Milan, Tyreek Sapp, I think those guys are really good. And I think they might start for Georgia. So I think that's an interesting spot. Another thing in this matchup, both of these defenses, which I think speaks further to their front sevens, have really struggled in the red zone. Like, if you can get inside the 20 on these teams, you're scoring points most of the time and not just field goals. Like, you're reaching the end zone. So I think that's something to keep an eye on for this matchup as far as whether or not Georgia can cover the spread, because if Florida is able to move the ball effectively, and I think they can on the ground, then this could be a much closer battle than we thought. And I think something else that's going to stand out too, going back to the Georgia secondary, like Ricky Pearsall leads Florida in receiving. He's got the most catches. He's got the most yards. I think he's got the most touchdowns too. I don't think he's the most important player in Florida's passing attack for this game. I think it's going to be Eugene Wilson, Trey Wilson. I think he needs to have a big game for the Gators against this secondary for Florida to have a realistic shot of winning this game. Because I do think they'll be able to run the ball effectively, if not, elite. I do think Pearsall will be okay. But I think Wilson needs to step up and be like that kind of X factor against this secondary because, like, they are good. Lassiter, Smith, Bullard, Starks is probably the best safety in the country right now. It's going to be difficult, but I don't think this is going to be a blowout.
I'm less sold on Florida's front seven than Tom is. I like their guys on the interior, but Leggett got hurt for South Carolina against the Gators. And South Carolina still scored 39 and made it a game. And there were a lot of plays in which Rattler had a clean pocket, despite, I think, a knowable that we have in the SEC this year is that Gamecock offensive line is hot garbage, mostly due to injury and inability to get good guys in the portal. I do take something away from Florida's inability to get pressure on Rattler, and I wonder if they can get pressure, because isn't Amarius Mims scheduled to be back right about now? Their stud NFL left tackle who had the ankle thing. This would be about the timeline for the goal for him to be back. I like their interior, but man, I don't know if Sapp is a big time guy like that. He might be, but I kind of wonder if some of his success is due to playing some subpar competition by SEC standards. We'll find out. I'm not saying they suck. I don't know. I'm not sold quite yet.
Latest update on Mims, a lot of rehab, a lot of maintenance, able to do some different things. Mims and Truss left the Vanderbilt game with an ankle sprain. Still no official word. Just got to see how they go through practice. But they are.
Chat all says Mims has been practicing this week.
Yeah. He's been cleared to come back to practice, so it would seem as though he's on pace to do that. Okay, acknowledging that Kentucky punked Florida at Kroger Field earlier this season. Is Florida the best team that Georgia has played? Like, no. The head-to-head result says Kentucky is better than Florida, but in a vacuum,
Kentucky's not better.
Right. I think Florida's a better team than Kentucky. Again, I understand that on that Saturday, the Wildcats absolutely dog-walked them, but I think that this is probably the toughest challenge that Georgia has had this year.
Until they play Mizzou.
Because it's a neutral site. This is a tougher game. It's not a tougher opponent, I think.
Florida neutral, tougher than Auburn road.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Auburn doesn't really score.
Right. Again, this is going to be the beginning of the run. You play Florida, play Missouri, you play Ole Miss, you play Tennessee, and you do it back to back to back to back. This backloaded schedule has allowed Georgia to just continue to figure itself out in a lot of different ways. But, here we go. Georgia and its run at history. Again, no three-peats in college football in the modern era. Last time was Minnesota before World War II. All that's going to be on the line right now because I'm not sure if this is going to be a team that finishes with great strength of schedule numbers. I'm not sure if this is going to be a team that is going to be able to do mess around a lot here as we come down the stretch of the season. So be sure to check. Yep, bud.
If you did not get Carson Beck at 200-1, like I gave out on the show 2 weeks ago, this is probably your last chance to get a good price on him, like today. If you wait until Monday and Georgia covers the spread, which is 14 and a half, he's going to go from, like, what's the best price you can get on Beck now? Like 50-1 at one book. I know FanDuel's got him probably around there.
I mean, we are a wide open season. Like, whether you want to grab J.J. McCarthy, whether you think Jaden Daniels has that Robert Griffin, Johnny Manziel path, or like, yeah, you got a couple losses, but statistically you were elite. Carson Beck has the best team, best player. Like, there's a lot of different roads that can all lead to a Heisman Trophy win right now.
Just look at who has the easiest November schedule. You'll find your winner there.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan Brooks.
You got 2 marquee games left, right, for Beck. This one, I guess at Ole Miss is probably going to be a primetime game, right? Because Ole Miss only has 1 loss. And then
I thought Ole Miss was home. Tennessee.
Oh, sorry. Right. And then Tennessee road. Georgia's going to be double-digit favorites in all 3 of those games.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, if you want Carson for the Heisman, I wouldn't wait.